We have a related development coming up. Tel Aviv-based screenwriter Hagai Levi, who has been a long-time critic of Israel's siege on Gaza, has warned that Israel's growing cultural isolation is hurting its artistic community. In a recent interview, Levi said that many artists are considering leaving the country, citing shrinking budgets, restricted freedom of speech, and the impact of international boycotts. Let's take a listen in to what he said.
I would say, 90% of the people, of the artist community in Israel, either it's cinema or plastic arts or music, they are so much, they're fighting, they're in the streets, and they are suffering because no budgets, less freedom of speech, so they are struggling, and boycotting them is actually weaken them, weaken the only people who can make a change, maybe, or at least fighting. So many people, everyone around me, talking about the possibility of leaving. It's just really so hard to live, especially in a specific age. But people are, ask themselves, how will I find work? Will I find friends? Will I find family? I mean, it's so hard to be an immigrant. This is a war crime in a huge scale and crimes against humanity. I'm not sure if it's genocide or not. I'm not sure if it's done, but there is definitely ethnic cleansing in the West Bank, and so it answers so many awful categories that I'm not sure if it's genocide or not.
A cultural boycott of Israel is gaining momentum, with stars like Javier Bardem, Olivia Colman and Mark Ruffalo refusing to work with Israeli film institutions. Countries like Ireland and Iceland have threatened to boycott Eurovision 2026 if Israel participates. At the recent Emmy Awards, actor Hannah Eibender emphasized that the boycott targets complicit institutions, not individuals, reflecting growing global pressure over the Gaza conflict. Mohammed, this is an interesting topic here, cultural isolation of Israel. How significant is this shift for Israel's image abroad? Of course, this doesn't just come down to politics, it comes down to culture as well, this war, as we see this leaking in this conflict, leaking its borders into film, into television. What are your thoughts on how the world's perspective is on Israel right now?
I hate to see individuals carrying the burden or suffering the consequences of the actions of their governments. At the end of the day, many Israelis do not condone what their government is doing. Just like the gentleman who was just speaking, the screenwriter, he clearly does not condone what his government is doing in the Palestinian occupied territories. And many members of the Israeli intelligentsia and the Israeli academic society, someone like Ilan Pappé, for example, those people have done strenuous efforts to document the injustices inflicted upon the Palestinians by successive Israeli governments, or since the inception of the Israeli state. However, I'm not surprised that there is a movement to ostracize Israel from the international community in general, including the cultural sphere, because so many people are fed up with the attempts to muzzle criticism of Israel in many Western countries. We have seen attempts on the other side. For example, in France, we've seen at the beginning of this war, before the French position on Gaza shifted as such, the French Senate passing legislation to prohibit the criticism of Israel, for example. France, a country that champions free speech, for example. We've seen American celebrities being canceled and shunned from the US media, mainstream media, because of their criticism of Israel. And this still happens until now. Now we're even seeing that the US government is willing as far to strip U.S. citizens of their citizenships if they engage in what they call anti-Semitic activity. And of course, anti-Semitism in their view is not being anti-Jewish, which is we're all against, but being being critical of Israel. You have a right to criticize any government or any country in the world, especially if that government is engaging in genocide. And by the way, Thomas, like within Israel itself, like the largest human rights organization in Israel is called Bet Shalom. Bet Shalom is one of the prime documenters of Israeli violations against Palestinians, including the genocide going on in Gaza. And they do play a very prominent role, for example, in all of the international efforts to hold Israel accountable on account of its actions, for example. So, but again, I do feel sad that certain individuals in the artistic community would bear the consequences of the actions of the governments. I think that there should be a dividing line between politics and art. However, I do believe that institutions that are supportive of the Israeli genocide in Gaza and Israel's behavior and intransigence in general should be targeted. However, the targeting of individuals or banning someone because he's of a certain nationality, I do not think that this is the right way to go. And I know this might be surprising coming from someone like me who's very sympathetic towards the Palestinian cause.
Mohammed Osman, thank you very much for joining us. Always an absolute pleasure to speak to you, and thank you for taking the time. We now move on and over to Europe.